podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldavar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek Podcast.
Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek Podcast.
Hey, it's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Plo Koon in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Everything Geek, the podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek Podcast.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek Podcast. I'm your host Rory, and joining me today is a very special guest. We have actor Jonathan Silver, best known as the voice of Alan in Pokemon. How are you today, Jonathan? It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. So, getting right into my questions, Jonathan, my first question for you is, how did you decide you wanted to become an actor?
When I was 6 years old, my parents were big movie buffs, and they were showing my sister and I lots of old movies. And so the first movie I remember watching and being really interested in anything sort of performance related was The Music Man with Robert Preston and Buddy Hackett and Shirley Jones, and that's been my favorite movie, one of my favorite movies ever since. And it totally got me interested to acting and theater and film, and then later on, very recently, voiceover work.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting indeed. It's not usually one of the more common movies, I guess.
No.
Not saying that's a bad thing, of course. It's actually great that it's very different than what I usually hear. Like when people say they're going to film be like Star Wars, and I'm like, yeah, isn't everyone like that nowadays? But it's actually great that you have something a little different and not even geek related. I mean, that's in some way actually pretty good.
I visited Los Angeles a couple of years ago, and I was on the Warner's backlot, and so I totally geeked out over being on the studio lot where they filmed the movie. So that's totally a little related. I totally just geeked out in a different kind of way while I was there.
That's really, really impressive. And yeah, it's still geeking out. Don't let take away from the fact that it's not geek related. It's still geeking out. If you're passionate about it, that's how I see it. So, moving on to my second question, how were you initially cast as Alan in Pokemon?
Rory, it was like so random how I was cast. An acquaintance of mine randomly Facebook messaged me one day and remembered that a couple years ago I was doing commercial voiceover work, and she asked me if I was still doing voiceover work, and I hadn't done it in at least 2 years, but I lied and said, absolutely, I'm always doing voiceover work. And so she put me in touch with, she said there's a friend of mine who's casting a project. She didn't say what the project was. And she just put me in touch with this guy, Tom. And Tom brought me in for an audition in New York. And when I was corresponding with him, I said, could I read a little sides before going in? And he said no. He said, I can't tell you what the project is. But I go in, and it turns out it's Pokemon. and he gives me a couple sides. I scream a couple things. I go through a couple battles, and that night around 2 a.m. he emails me and says, "Hey man, you got the gig." And so that was almost over a year ago.
Very interesting.
No, it's just super random. Actually, my friend's name is Jen Forziata DaCosta, and she's the voice of Nurse Joy, currently in the XY series. And so she was the one that totally got me the gig.
Very interesting. Here I used to think that line was always a bad thing. Well, you've proved me otherwise in some regard.
It was the best lie I've ever told so far.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I should do it more often.
Totally, absolutely. A great piece of advice someone once said to me was lie up. Just always, if someone asks you, "Hey, can you do this?" and you really can't, but you can teach yourself, just lie up.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice right there. So, moving on to my third question, were you surprised when you found out that Alon was the assistant to Professor Sycamore?
All right, here's a bit. I have to reveal a little something. I'm a child of the late 80s and early 90s, so I just missed the Pokemon fanaticism with the cards and the series. So I didn't start watching Pokemon until I started working on the show. I was surprised, sure, when I said the lines that he was Professor Sycamore's assistant. I was shocked.
Yeah, I don't think I believe you. I'm just kidding. I do. Yeah. But you know what's actually funny now thinking about it is in the episode in the first Mega Evolution special when Alon says it to Marin, it's kind of funny because if you weren't too familiar with Pokemon, it would have actually come across very well in your performance of the line because when Alon says it, he actually says it as if it's no big deal. Like he just goes, "I was the professor's assistant," and Marin's like, "What?" And he was just like, "Yeah, it's no big deal. I was."
Just brush it off, Alon. It's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, in terms of your performance, maybe it was even better that you didn't know who Sycamore was if you didn't.
I sometimes think it is, although now what I've learned and taught myself to do is the subtitled version of the episodes are usually posted online before I even go into record. So now I've been checking them out before going in to record the English dub version, just so that it gives me a better sense of so that I know what I'm not so shocked and surprised with certain elements.
That's a good idea. So I think when they changed in the second special, I think when they changed the joke that Marin was his girlfriend to her being his sidekick, that must have come as a bit of a shock. Like, what?
Absolutely. It's funny. It's totally funny that you mentioned that because I went deep, and you don't have to go deep, but I went deep into the bowels of the internet to see what people were saying about Alon and what they were saying about the relationship between Alon and Marin. And there is some freaky fan art out there that is it's not like kinky or anything, but it's totally. There's my favorite one is Marin giving Alon a kiss on the cheek, and there are hearts coming out from her brain, and Alon's kind of stoic face is he's just hating this. He just can't stand it in his normal petulant sort of self. That's my favorite fan art.
I know the thing. I mean, it's certainly common with animes and animations in general. Fans have some pretty interesting fan arts. Let's just say interesting and not anything else.
Yeah. We won't go any more into that. Let the viewers and the listeners do their own.
It's so funny for me, and now that we mentioned that girlfriend sidekick thing, it's kind of funny because I watched the subtitled version prior to watching the dubbed version too. And it's funny because I kind of feel like that's a little inconsistent because you can understand Alon's reaction in the subtitle. Like, if someone who's younger than him gets accused of being his girlfriend, he's going to be like, huh? Like he is. I mean, Warren kind of is his sidekick, and yet he still says "huh"
Totally.
in the dub, and I'm like, okay, they maybe should have kept the girlfriend thing because he should be disagreeing with sidekick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Absolutely,
just
that's
thought
funny.
it was kind of funny. Just it's a small thing, but it's funny at the same time. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
so moving on to my fourth question. What is your personal opinion on Alon's goal of beating all of the Mega Evolved Pokemon and standing on top of the summit if you have one?
Sure, I have an opinion. I don't know. Alon is a really passionate young man. It seems that he's a little. He doesn't necessarily. He's overcome by this one goal that he has, which is great. We were talking about passion in theater and acting before, so I can kind of relate to. He wants to stand on the summit, and he wants to all of the mega evolved Pokemon. And so, I mean, personal opinion is I keep wishing the best for him, and every time I go in to record something, I kind of hope that he keeps working toward that goal. He never is that goal. He work. I just I root for him as well. I'm kind of interested to see where the writers and the animators take him with.
That's a really great answer. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So moving on to my fifth question. Ever since the Mega Evolution specials Alarm Stars and began airing, Pokemon fans have wondered if we'll ever see Ash and Alarm meet eventually. Recently a picture was showing that they will eventually cross paths. Obviously we're not looking for any details for obvious reasons. We don't want spoilers, you can't say it. So we're both at a loss in that. But can you say if you have recorded ones for that episode?
I don't think I have recorded longer yet. So that's all I'm gonna say about that, or else I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, but it's just very interesting. I mean, it's just so interesting because Alon has only been in 2 specials in the dub, at least. I mean, in Japan they've already released the 3rd, and you just said you recorded the 3rd already. It's interesting for so long already, even though he's been in essential episodes. Pokemon fans are so passionate about Alon at some point. When you think of that,
I think it'll be exciting. I want to know if they're going to battle. I want to know like how the 2 of them would battle, because from what I've seen, and Ash has all those same almost they kind of have same passions. Ash is a really passionate young guy, and Alon is a really passionate young guy. So the 2 of them battling together, I think would be epic. I think it would be so cool to see how story wise and storyboard how that would go down.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, it's just interesting because maybe it'll finally be the push Ash needs to get a Mega Evolved Pokemon of his own. I mean,
yeah.
So moving on from my 5th question to my next question, what, if anything, can you tease about the 3rd Mega Evolution special, seeing as you said you did record it?
I'm just going to say it's absolutely epic. It's awesome. It was definitely the coolest episode I've done so far. I think the one word description I can describe is epic. It's a really great episode. I had like a good time recording that one. That's like the little tease I can give. Epic.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah. And it better be epic to describe how I felt after they went back to the Hoenn region and brought back Stephen Stone.
Right.
Like, yeah. So let's see if it can get more epic than that.
Yeah, I can't wait for people to respond to this 3rd episode. I think people will really dig it.
Definitely, I hope they will as well, just as much as you do. Maybe not as much, considering you're actually a part of the show. I just talk about it. Okay, I hope I'll have something good to say about it.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, there we go. So, my second last question is, I know that you have both acted and directed in a lot of theatre productions. Can you tell our listeners about some of the theatre productions you've been involved with and which were your favourites to be a part of?
Sure, yeah. Well, I actually live in, I don't live in New York. I live in Philadelphia. That's where I make my living as a theater artist. And I grew up outside of New York where we record Pokemon. But I live in Philly now, and so I'm doing a lot of regional work down here, and I like to direct recently. That's a new passion of mine. I still like to act every once in a while. The most one of my most recent favorite things that I did was I went back to my old high school, and I directed a version of Romeo and Juliet with rock and roll music that I picked and put into the show. Uh, Excuse me. So that was an amazing adventure that I had with the high school students who were completely skeptical of doing Shakespeare. They were really upset with me when they first heard we were going to do a Shakespeare show and not a big, flashy musical theater show. And then 7 to 8 weeks into the process, they were just on board. They loved it. They were great. They made sense of the that for young adults, young people, was pretty. It was a moving experience to be a part of. So that was like my last big thing that I feel like I've done that I'm really passionate about, and I just continue to work in Philadelphia and work on some fun projects. I just produced a project 2 nights ago where it was a big gala event and the power went out about 45 minutes before the show, and people paid thousands of dollars to come to this gala event, and we had to quickly on our feet move the entire audience, 350 people, into our shop 2 blocks north and create a stage with a couple of lights and a single microphone and a piano, and we were still able to hold the gala event that honored actually Mr. Stephen Sondheim, who's a composer and musical theater lyricist.
It's very interesting, and I'm glad everything worked out and that they got their money's worth in the end. It would have been pretty bad if they didn't sort out the power in some way.
Oh man, it was a wild experience, but that, I guess, the old adage, the show must go on, absolutely was 120% happening that night. I'm still coming down from that experience and that high feeling of making it happen, and everybody having a unique, memorable experience. So that was fun.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thanks, man.
I still don't know how people weren't on board on Romeo and Juliet from the very beginning, but okay.
Because they're like 15, 16, 17-year-olds, man. So they
Weren't Romeo and Juliet the same age?
Of course they were, but they hear Shakespeare, they hear Shakespeare and they think, how are they going to understand the text? And I've been another theater geeky thing. I'm like a big Shakespeare fan. I geek out over Shakespeare, and so I wanted to try and share that with the kids. And ultimately, they came around and they were completely on board. And so that was they came around. So.
And one of them got to be the lucky Romeo, and one of them the lucky Juliet.
Absolutely.
I'm sure
They were great. Those two kids were great.
That's great to hear. So my final question for you, Jonathan, is: do you have any upcoming acting roles or any other projects you would like to talk about?
I mean, just keep listening to Pokemon. That you'll hear me there. And I've got some small gigs down here in Philadelphia. I'm directing a one-man show. A buddy of mine, he wrote this show about his life and his relationship to food. And actually, the audience is going to eat his food. They're going to be served food during the production, and so that's my what I'm gonna go to rehearse on in a couple hours after we stop talking. But that's the most recent upcoming thing, and then whatever comes my way, man. I just keep to the grind and keep going up and working as Alon, and that's about it.
Well, you can't go wrong with food, as the saying goes. So Yeah, I'm sure that will be a
Yeah, he's a
success.
great cook too. We've actually worked out a bartering system. So he's gonna pay me in cooking lessons. So I'm gonna get a few private cooking lessons from him, where we go to the supermarket and I'm gonna tell him the foods that I like to eat, and we're gonna pick them out, and he's gonna point out foods that I should be eating, and vegetables and fruits that I probably should be eating, and then he's gonna teach me how to make some pretty amazing meals, so I can wine and dine, my girlfriend and my family.
It probably wasn't the best idea to admit to our listeners that you're getting cooking
That's
lessons.
okay. I don't care. That's all right.
I know. I'm just joking.
I can only
joking.
eat macaroni and cheese so many nights of the week. So,
have you done voiceover work in anime or cartoon or was Pokemon your first ever?
Cartoon anime that I've ever done. I've never worked with all my other voiceover work was like commercials, radio commercials, and in college, I won a free voiceover, and that I commit to all that I still use for when I send in for commercial voiceover work. I just still use that demo, and I keep getting work through that, and so you can't go wrong with something that keeps getting you work. So I've been doing, radio commercials and fun stuff like that. But Pokemon was the first thing I'd ever done with a screen in front of me and the script down, music, and trying to match flaps. This is the first, and so far only going of that. So
Very interesting indeed. So lots of our questions today, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much. It's been an honor talking to you, man.
You're very welcome, and hopefully we can get some point.
As more stuff happens, sure, I would love that.
And when Alon and Ash finally cross paths, maybe.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so.
And for our listeners who can't see Jonathan doing it, fingers crossed, and on the camera, there you go. He wants to see it too. So, yeah. So hope we'll talk to you again soon. Then, bye, and thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Rory.
Bye.
Bye.
So that was our interview with actor Jonathan Silver. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. So, time to wrap up today's show. Make sure to check out our YouTube channels. The podcast is www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast. My YouTube channel is www.youtube.com/user/Sephdus Check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us at the below email, everythinggeekpodcast